Welcome back, everyone. The All Progressives Congress, Osun State, on Monday said only the Supreme Court can invalidate February 10, 2025 appeal court verdict that reinstated its members to take control of councils in the state. The opposition party noted the fresh dismissal of another suit on local government at the appeal court in June never invalidated the earlier verdict by the same court. A statement by the party through its state legal officer, Debacle, warned the Osun State Governor, Ademola Adeleke, and People's Democratic Party against inciting the public and court against the reinstated ESCOs. But the state government, led by the PDP, appears to be charting a different course. Is this a constitutional crisis, political brinkmanship, or simply a matter of judicial process? With us today is Farouk Abbas, legal practitioner, who would help us to understand the party's stance and, the broader implications for local governance in Osun State. Good evening to you, Mr. Abbas. Thank you so much for coming on the program.
Good evening, madam. Pleasure to be here.
So we have a High Court ruling upholding the dissolution of the APC-led ESCO and a subsequent appeal court ruling declaring that dissolution illegal. Our first question is, how do you interpret the validity of both judgments? Can the state still rely on the lower court ruling?
Thank you very much for the question. It's a very straightforward question, and there's no need for any confusion as far as the issue is concerned. But when it comes to politics, Nigerians sort to raise all sort of irrelevant issues. The issue is very straightforward. There were two judgments at the Federal High Court nullifying...
Two conflicting judgments.
They were not conflicting. Federal High Court, they were saying the same thing. They both nullified the local government election in October 2022. After nullifying, the APC appealed against one. The APC also appealed against the second one as the third appellant. But the first one that the APC appealed again was successful. That's the PDP Federal High Court judgment. That was successful. The appeal was successful. So in essence, what the Court of Appeal said in that case was that the Federal High Court was wrong to have nullified the election of the local government chairman. And that was
2022.
In 2022. So the effect of that Court of Appeal judgment was that he reinstated the chairman of the local government. The second judgment was by another party, the APP. APC was also an appellant in that particular appeal, but they didn't pursue the appeal. So sometime in January this year, the appeal was dismissed for lack of diligent prosecution. By the dismissal of that appeal for lack of diligent prosecution, what that simply means is that the second Federal High Court judgment is still valid. But the validity is limited in the sense that when the Superior Court, which is the Court of Appeal, has nullified one of the judgments, you can't bandy about a Federal High Court judgment when we have a Federal High Court judgment. Because the two Federal High Court judgments are the same judgment, same parties, same issues, same judge. So the effect is that the Court of Appeal judgment that was delivered on February 10 is the valid judgment which has reinstated the local government chairman. But about last week on June 13 or so, the APC, because when the Court of Appeal delivered the February 10 judgment, the PDP were making a lot of noise. And when they were making a lot of noise, as if they were trying to hit the polity and mislead people. So I believe that the APC, in the abundance of caution, decided to say, okay, let's try and release that other appeal. Since the PDP are claiming that the Federal High Court judgment is still valid, let's try and release that one. But in trying to release the appeal, the Court of Appeal said, no, we are not going to release this appeal because it's going to look like we're trying to compete against another Court of Appeal judgment. And the Court of Appeal said other things. So in essence, although that Court of Appeal second decision seemed to say that the Federal High Court judgment was still valid, when you have a Court of Appeal judgment and you have a Federal High Court judgment, even a law school student will agree that the Court of Appeal judgment is superior to the Federal High Court judgment. So there's no confusion.
What you have told us tonight is that the appeal court ruling automatically overrides the High Court's decision.
Exactly.
So the second part of that question is, almost the Supreme Court now resolve this contradiction?
There's no contradiction.
Okay.
And there's no contradiction because the AGF agrees with the interpretation. The IG agrees with the interpretation. Any independent lawyer who reads it, who is not holding a political appointment, would agree with that decision. So if the PDP believes that the interpretation of the APC is wrong or is political or is jaundiced, they are the ones who should go on appeal. Because a party who is satisfied with a judgment doesn't go on appeal. So the PDP they don't know what they are doing. They're just trying to overheat the polity and mislead their followers. They're
talking about overheating the polity because the APC says, and please let me quote this: the latest act of mischief unleashed by the governor and his party men were caused by the latest decision of the Court of Appeal of 13th June, refusing to release the appeal of the APP, that's the Allied People's Movement, APM rather, and the All Progressives Congress. So clearly the APC is maintaining that the latest really had no bearing on the federal February 10 judgment of the Court of Appeal. which according to the party reinstated its sacked chairman and councillors. But for the purpose of clarity, was there a specific directive in the ruling ordering immediate reinstatement, or does that interpretation come from the APC's legal ending?
No, you know, if you look at, because the way appeal matters work is that when you go on appeal, you have reliefs that you are asking on appeal. The APC was dissatisfied with the judgment of the Federal High Court, and it appealed against that decision, and it asked for several reliefs. Part of those reliefs include reinstatement of the local government chairman. And the Court of Appeal simply held that the Federal High Court judgment was wrong, was invalid, because it was delivered with lack of jurisdiction. So what that means is that the Federal High Court judgment, this Court of Appeal judgment has nullified the Federal High Court judgment. And when you nullify a decision, what it means is that the status quo before that decision takes place, especially since the reliefs are there. So the justices of the Court of Appeal didn't have to specifically reinstate, because the foundation of the PDP's case is the Federal High Court judgment, and it has been demolished. So they don't have to mention it. The Constitution does not mention several other things. Even in religion, in Islam, if you go to the Quran, you won't see, if you want to pray, perform ablution. No constitution has everything, so no judgments will be all-encompassing. But if the APC believe that the judgment doesn't say what we are saying, they can challenge it.
So that's my next question. What legal remedies are available for the APC to enforce this judgment?
No, the APC, I believe the APC has enforced the judgment already. The judgment has been enforced as far as I'm concerned, because as far as I know, the local government chairman in Osun State, as of date, are the ones elected in October 2022, the APC local government chairman.
They were elected, but they are not functioning.
Well, they are not. They are functioning, but the reason why they can't function fully is because of the politics that the PDP government has brought into play. And why do I say this? They ordered the local government civil servants not to come to the office. So since the judgment of February 10, they haven't been coming to the office. But the local government chairmen are trying their best. I understand that they are currently going through the administrative process to access their funding, and I believe that any moment from now, their funding should be released to them. But as far as we know, they are recognized and they are functioning.
Okay, because there are those who have said only the Supreme Court can invalidate the appeal court's judgment, and that's what the APC is saying also. But is the state not entitled to appeal and, you know, request a stay of execution in the meantime?
Well, the state does not have. They have the right to appeal against that decision. They also have the right to ask for the stay, but they haven't done that. They haven't done that. Although they filed the case.
What's the implication of that if they haven't done that now?
It means if they haven't done that, the implication of that is that they are bound by the judgment of the Court of Appeal, because the only defense they are holding on to is a Federal High Court judgment. You know, so what it means is that they've agreed that the Court of Appeal judgment should be implemented. So by ordering the local government chairman not to go to office, what they want to do is that they want to politically prevent the local government chairman from functioning. So they've agreed, they've considered that they've lost the battle legally in court. Right. So now they are using their power as the governor of the state to prevent the local government civil servants from coming to office, because the local government chairman have not started paying salaries. So they are just playing politics now. And the local government, the grassroots, they are suffering. Right.
But for the sake of those of us who are not lawyers, and when issues like this come up, it's important for us to understand the fundamental issues here. So does the law require the Supreme Court to hear this case, or can it choose not to entertain it? No, especially if the appeal court ruling was unanimous.
The Supreme Court's jurisdiction can only be invoked if a dissatisfied party appeals against the Court of Appeal judgment. So now the PDP, they've elected not to appeal against that judgment. So having not appealed...
We're not sure of that.
No, we are sure, we're sure. Even because if they appeal, they will serve the APC, and we will know about it. They haven't done that. They haven't done that. So if they've not done that, it means that they've tacitly admitted. And the reason I know they've not done that is because they know that if they appeal against it, they will fail on appeal. They will fail on appeal. So they are just playing to the gallery and making noise on social media.
So there was another case, and I do not know if there is a relationship between both cases. There was a withdrawal of a case, the Attorney General of Osun State versus Attorney General of the Federation. And I have a document before me indicating that the state government withdrew that case. First, is this a different case? Do you know about that case?
Yes, I know about the case.
So
it's a different case in the sense that the subject matter, there are different suit numbers, but it's the same local government issue. And you know, the filing of the case in the first instance, for any serious person, you will know that it's a misstep. It was bound to fail in the first place, because the local government...
It was about local government funding.
Yes, the state government went to court saying that the federal government withheld the funds of local governments. But the question you should ask them is that, are they the ones, do they have the locals to file a case on behalf of the local government? The subject matter of the case at the Supreme Court, they also filed a similar case at the Federal High Court. But today, by withdrawing the case at the Supreme Court today voluntarily, it shows that they are disorganized and they don't know what they are doing. Because if they actually know what they are doing, they won't have filed the case in the first place. So they are seeing the handwriting is becoming clearer by the day, that as far as the local government is concerned, the APC local government chairmen are the ones that will be in charge. And that's why they've withdrawn their challenge. Because you can't say on the one hand that the federal government has withheld the funds of the local government, and in less than 3 weeks or 4 weeks, you are capitulating after they saw the robust defense of the Attorney General of the Federation. So it's a symptom that they are disorganized, they don't know what they are doing, and they'll keep on making noise. But
of course, what you're saying tonight is that the Supreme Court can only decide on this case when the PDP files an appeal. But is the Supreme Court obligated to fast-track cases involving political office holders at the local level?
Yes.
Could you take years to resolve?
Yes. I mean, if they file the appeal, of course, the Supreme Court will give it priority, because the Supreme Court understands that the local government is the closest to the people. And when they can't function, it affects the whole country. It even affects the Supreme Court itself. So if the case were to go before them, they will have fast-tracked it. And again, the case the Osun State government filed at the Supreme Court, the reason why they withdrew it as soon as possible is because they know that the Supreme Court will have heard it any moment from now. So in order to save themselves the shame of having a judgment that will be against them, they've withdrawn it. So if they appeal, of course the Supreme Court would hear the appeal in an expedited manner.
All right, let's go over this issue again. The state governors have the constitutional backing to remove elected local government officers.
They don't. But when you have...
Why is this happening? Why is this recurring?
Yes, this is recurring because when you have people who don't believe in the rule of law, who just play politics with everything. In this same Osun State, we've had a governor, Ogbeni Rauf Aregbesola, when he came in, the PDP local government chairmen were in place. He didn't remove them. He went to court against them, and he allowed the case to run its course. But in the PDP's case, you took the APC chairman to court. Even if the court had nullified the election for the sake of argument, if we concede that the nullification of the election of the local government chairman was even valid in the first place, they have a right to appeal. And until they appeal, you can't remove them from office. But because the PDP governor had a predetermined motive, immediately the Federal High Court delivered its judgment. Instead of it to allow them to exercise their right of appeal and fully run through that course, he signed an executive order removing them from office. So in the first instance, it was wrong of the governor to have removed them from office. Because the fact that a court nullifies your election doesn't mean you must leave office until you finish your appeal process. So what is the foundation of this crisis in the first place is the ill-advised action of the governor of Osun State in removing the local government chairman from office.
By another legal practitioner.
It's not, the governor is not a legal practitioner.
I know.
Yes.
The State Attorney General must have advised him.
Well, interestingly, if you see, the State Attorney General has been very silent. I find it very surprising. For the past 2 weeks, he hasn't issued a statement. I'm yet to see it, confirming that the Federal High Court judgment is superior to the Court of Appeal judgment. Those who are making noise...
But I'm sure there are lawyers defending this case in court.
When you see lawyers who are collecting salaries and who believe that they have to do their job. But I don't believe that...
So what does this say about the integrity of the profession? Are you embarrassed on behalf of your colleagues?
I wouldn't say I'm embarrassed because people say that the law is an ass, and when it comes to a state like Osun State, ignorance thrives a lot because of the high level of illiteracy. So what you find is that those who are actually banding about these issues are not necessarily lawyers. The lawyers amongst them are very few, and if you look at them, it's either they are an appointee of the government or they are on salaries or they are a member of their political party. So, that's the way I see it. So I feel that I wouldn't say I'm embarrassed because I know the governments in Osun State, they play politics with everything. So it's symptomatic of...
So based on this conversation, where does legal responsibility lie for interpreting the legality of local government?
Let's even... Sitting down here, I have a duty to say the truth. I told you that the Court of Appeal judgment that was delivered on June 13 regarding the APC's application to release was dismissed. The APC lost that process. So it would be wrong of me to come and start trying to defend or try and say the process favored the APC. It didn't favor the APC. So I have considered that. And I also considered that when the Federal High Court delivered judgment nullifying the election, it was valid. So now what I'm simply doing is that I'm interpreting what the judge has said in their judgment.
All right.
And not everybody might want to say, no, not everybody might want to do that. Even if I have interest in politics, I should be able to remove my political cap and use my legal practitioner cap.
Thank you. I would have loved to ask you if you thought the judiciary should intervene more strongly in protecting the autonomy of local government. But sadly, we're out of time. Thank you so much for joining us on the program. Farouk Abbas is a legal practitioner and also a political affairs analyst. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Now let's go to break. I'll be right back. Please stay with us.